Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, this is a story that is not really anything new, but however, you have people that may not be aware that it is happening and has been happening. The police at LA schools are arresting and citing Black students at a disproportionate rate. And this is by Carla Javier in News on October 22nd, 2018. And so this is going on in the LA schools, and you don't even want to know what's going on in some of the other schools, um, because there are some huge problems going on. And so passed through the security checkpoint at Thomas Jefferson High. Okay, so LA School Police Department, which patrols LAUSD campuses and parts of the surrounding area, is the largest force of its kind in the country, or in the county, actually. Well, actually, country. I believe it says, see that where they did it. They made a mistake. Sometimes articles, they make mistakes. Um, So it goes on to read that, and it's taking enforcement actions against Black students disproportionately, according to a new report from the Ralph J. Bunche Center in Mary's Million Hoods Project. So from 2014 to 2017, 25 per citations, arrests, for minor violations on school grounds involve Black students, according to researchers. And so that's the Black student proportionality disrupts opportunities to learn for Black students. So one of the researchers, Terry Allen, said this in an email. So the project's finding wasn't surprising to 50. I'm not, who is a Black person, of course, and used to actually attend school. He said that the school police once took him out of his entrepreneurial class, search him for was probably when had not. Well, of course, they would still don't let students use marijuana, but this was probably back in the days when it was viewed, you know, a really bad uh, drug, but they didn't find anything on the kid. So the incident affected his studies, said George. So it affects the students because it makes them feel like you're teaching them, you don't trust them, could have any, but they as in police officers who were criminals. Goes on to say that I practically missed the lesson that the teacher was talking about, and I after the same day and give up time after school just to get what he said. He said so. George said that he still remembers noticing the numbers of the officers around his school, his old school. So I don't know. It was like they really officers for us, like we're really animals or something. So LAUSD population and LASPD involvement, that's between 2014. And so it gives you nationality. And then Black and Latino. You should have SPD involvement. Okay. And so it's a graph of Black people. And you see white, you see Black, you see Latino. And so it's LAUSD population, okay? And so then it also shows LASPD involvement, okay? And so I guess it's the officers, okay? And so you can see in the graph, when you look at the Black students that are, because they off-searched are 5%. That's a high number compared to the number of students in that population. And so that's a high number. And Latino, they're getting it too. You know, there's supposedly 74%, but 71% of the time they're harassed as well. So it's showing that it's mainly Black and Latino people that are harassed more often by these police. And that Blacks make up a smaller number. The number, wow, of harassment is so high. It's like what it's looking like is every Black student is getting cited. It's crazy. It's wild. It just doesn't make any sense. But anyway, another of the surprised researchers that 1 in 4 students arrested were either in elementary or middle school. And so it says, I really thought this data was school students, and there were enough high school students in there, said Isaac Bryan, public policy advisor at the Bunch Center and a member of the research team. But to 1 in 4 was a child in middle school or younger, it was really shocking. So the studying youth at the school is especially important because there's a lot of growing scholarship that any contact with the juvenile justice system, including that you'll have contact with the adult penal system. And this is what Brian has said. This is this prison to pipeline thing, and it's been extended to specific. It says here, it says that the school diversion program for the students ages 13 to 17 who commit minor legal violations on the school grounds, according to the department, those depend on other things. Diversion uses a non-punitive enforcement model. So the student, along with the counselor and the youth, are in an action plan to improve behavior and academic performance. So from 2017, diversion accounted for 17% of the school's police enforcement actions. The LA, or Los Angeles School Police Department, is the largest force of its kind. And it looked like it says the country. I said county, but the country, probably the county, the country. So said it's still looking over the report, and it sent a statement from the chief, Stephen Zipperman. Okay, so LA Unified are Los Angeles Unified and the Los Angeles School Police Department, which is, this is what they bring in SP, Angeles Police Department. Okay, and so let's go back up here to this graph. In the orange, that is the LA School Police Department and the encounters they have with that ethnic group. So when you look at white, it's 3% to 10% of the white students that they have any, and then the other, the makeup of the other, which could be any other group, not classified like 2% to 8%. But you have this small number of Black students or percentage of Black students, but the majority of the time that they're getting cited or arrested is 25%. That just doesn't make any sense. Like, what, every kid is getting a ticket? Every kid is getting arrested? It's like, that's what it's looking like when you look at this graph. It just doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I'm going to go back. It's like it's intentional. And the LA School Police Department welcomes the partnership of the independent researchers to evaluate the data pertaining to the school and the student safety. So the recently published report from Ralph J. Buncher, City and Dollar Hoods, Policing Our Students, compiled 4 years of data providing by the LA School Police Department. And so the report is currently being reviewed. We will continue to utilize our reform student-centered safety initiatives and support the continued hard work performed by the men and women of the LA School Police Department. And so there's a full report on the Hood's website that has gone on in the police enforcement that has been done in the school districts. So police at LA schools are arresting and citing Black students at a disproportionate rate. And if not here, it's just unbelievable. It's like 25% represents Los Angeles School Police Department and how much involvement they have with that particular ethnic group. And so if you see the black graph right there, Black students, there's just picture, you got 8% of Black students, which that makeup is like a small percentage, but the involvement they have with LA School Police Department is 25%. That just doesn't make any sense. It's like unbelievable, you know. And also you have Latino students, or what they have, Latinx students, 74%, which is a large number of Latino students attending, but their involvement with law enforcement is almost you look at the numbers, is there something that can show you the numbers of, teachers that are from these, you know, groups, or the numbers of Latino teachers, the numbers of Black teachers, the numbers of white teachers that are teaching schools. And I'm wondering, do they have that? I'm not sure. Because the reason I'm saying this is because there are some schools, believe it or not, that the staff is not as diverse as the kids would be, you know. And there's some schools where there might be a higher population of most of the LA schools or LA County schools will have a higher population of Latino students. But there's, even in LA Unified, I believe there may be more diversity in terms of teachers that are teaching at those schools. But when in the LA city, but when you start getting into certain neighborhoods and certain areas, you start seeing that the diversity starts to change. And so I was just wondering if anybody had ever thought to look up who all is actually attending as a teacher, who all is going, and let's not add the teacher aid people. I'm talking about the instructors, the lead instructors. Like, what is the diversity makeup of these elementary schools and the high schools? Like, what teachers are there? Because I would believe that some of these schools, if you have such a large number of certain groups that are being targeted, if you have Black kids that are being targeted, I wonder if some of those schools are some of the schools that I've witnessed where they don't have Black teachers. I don't know if anybody knows that, but there are some schools where you hardly see, you can count on one hand at how many African American teachers there are at some of these schools. And there might be a lot of substitute, teachers. There might be a larger pick of teacher assistants. But however, like, if you're trying to figure out who are all the lead, the main teachers, there's some schools where you'll find that there's a despairing number where most of the teachers are either they're white or they're they look white, put it that way. They may not be white, but they look white. And in those schools, there's sometimes targeting of students who aren't white or who are, Black, or who are Black. And so I don't know if people have investigated that. For example, like if you just randomly okay, they may look at it as 2015-16 demographic report. I just picked something at random. I might have to actually look into it before I start looking. I'm reading at the same time, so that's why I paused. But I'm looking because what I'm saying is there's not very many Black teachers. That is my point. I've noticed there's some schools where you don't really see any Black teachers that are holding positions. Or if you see any Black teachers, they're an assistant. They don't lead the class, but they're doing everything as if they lead the class, and they don't make the same amount of money as the lead because the lead is someone white or someone that looks or appears to be white. Um, a lot of the teachers end up being teachers that are not of color, or they appear to not be of color. They tend to be white, and you hardly see any African American teachers. And some of that is, I'm going to say some of it is because they feel that they want more teachers that speak Spanish or more teachers that reflect the school looking teachers. And it depends on what neighborhood, what community. If you really pay attention, I noticed that I'm just going to be really honest here about what I've seen in my days. Um, when I was in LA and around different schools, the schools that were in LA, you would find more teachers. You'd be able to find more teachers that were Black. But when you start moving and migrating out of LA and you start going around to different schools, neighborhoods, you notice the change in the population of instructors. And you start noticing that the teachers are not Black. A lot of them are not Black at all, or they you can count on one hand. They look, Black teachers are like specks in terms of, like, if you see a picture of all of the teachers and you see only like maybe not, you can count on one hand how many Black teachers are there. And then I've seen parents that are not satisfied their kid is always being disciplined, or they're treating their kid a particular way and they're wondering why. And so I just want to leave that out there. I noticed I have witnessed things that are not really good in terms of that. That's one thing, when you're in these schools and that there's not enough diversity of instructors, and that doesn't feel that welcoming. It feels like it breeds problems. The other thing, because if you do have children there that are African American, they're going to feel as though they don't have enough, they don't have any adult representation, no one that they can go to, that they can converse with, that would understand what their issues are, because they are not from the same background or from the same culture. And so I would think that a school would have instructors that would represent all of the kids, not just one group of kids. Um, that's all I'm saying. The other thing is to some of those schools tend to target children of color a little more harder and harshly. Now, LA has a lot more diversity in some of the schools. It might be changing though, for whatever the reason. What I have learned too is that a lot of people are not wanting to teach anymore. And so they have a high percentage of 2 districts that I've looked at that have lots of openings. And that is not by accident. And the reason why is because it's a mix of issues. It has to do with administration. It has to do with money. It has to do with, sometimes it could be kids that, they send the kids to school that they could be coming from a group home, or maybe the parents have kind of abandoned some of the kids. And so they tend to leave that responsibility on the teachers. And then sometimes it isn't the kids. Sometimes the kids are unfairly. It depends on what goes on. There's different scenarios. So it's not just one thing. Sometimes it's influences in the neighborhood, and then other times it's instructors that will tend to target, because they have their own biases. They'll tend to target children of color more often. Like, they're disciplined more harshly, they're cited more often, they might be more prone to arresting children of color rather than children who represent a different ethnic group. And so I've witnessed these things. So it wasn't a surprise to me when I saw this article at all. There's a lot of things going on in these schools that people are unaware of. And also a lot of the programs that they used to have. I remember just when I was growing up, there were a lot of curricular programs, outside of academics. And it made kids encouraged and want to go to school, because they had football, they had cheerleading, they had glee club, they had home ec, they had all these little things they can join. Some schools still have certain events, certain things that they will allow kids to participate in that are fun. But a lot of those programs from back when that were really fun, they've cut them out because of not having enough funding for those programs. And so there's always excuses about money at these schools, certain schools. And what they recently discovered is that there are certain individuals that are in the schools that are making higher salaries. Do you remember this incident that happened in the city of Bell? This was not a school, but it was the city of Bell. The city of Bell. Um, I have to put it in. Okay, so it was called the City of Bell Scandal, and the Bell Scandal involved a misproportionate or proportionate or a misappropriation of public funds in Bell, California. And this happened when they had certain people that were making like really high income, and Bell was still paying price. They're still paying the price for the corruption and the scandals of as a dumping ground. Okay, so over the last decade, Bell, the city of Bell, has worked hard to emerge from the massive municipal blah blah blah, but it was forced to sell it in 2013 to help pay back money lost to the farm, which has become a point of pride of the working class community, and failed to take into account how much a gravel yard would change the city, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so how the LA Times broke the Bell corruption story. So there was a lot of money taken out of the city, and there was a misappropriation of public funds for the city. Well, let me not get into this story too deep. The reason why I brought this story up is because this same incident that happened in the city of Bell, it's happening in some of these schools where funding or money is not being handled correctly, and that it is not being, it's not being utilized correctly. And that is what a lot of people are complaining and upset about. And so it's not only how students are being treated, that's another problem in and of itself, but there are also other issues with misappropriation of funds at the school districts. And that's what I'm trying to bring out, that nobody has said anything about it. They just stay quiet and they keep a lid on it. And what ends up happening is people, when they feel that they're getting caught or that they're being exposed by other faculty members or members of the school, or usually it's the union or Teamsters, they speak out on issues, and a lot of times they're not heard. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they end up having to strike or protest or something. But what's been happening at some of the school districts is that there's some people that are making top pay, and they get a raise every year, and it goes up a substantial amount of money, that it goes up their raises. And they keep telling like staff, that they don't have money for this and they don't have money for that. And then when they do use money for certain things, it goes for stuff that really isn't going to do any good for the students or the school, or it's long overdue. And then you have these people that are giving themselves raises actually, there are some employees who have the power. They are giving themselves raises every year. And while other people are not getting any pay, not hardly getting any pay raise, just getting a couple of pennies. And so people have been very disappointed by that. They've been disappointed because they feel that they're not getting the money that they've earned for all of the work that they put in. And a lot of these people that are giving themselves raises, they sit behind a desk. They're not really in the classrooms. And two, we had an incident where some people are getting laid off, pink slipped. And then it's weird because they pink slip them and then they hire them back. But the two districts that I've looked into that have like mostly lots of openings, that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. That's telling you something. LA Unified is one, and there's LA City Schools is one, and Pasadena. They have a lot of openings. But if you find out why they have a lot of openings, and you'll see why. It's not by accident. They had a lot of staff, but when they started cutting people's money or misappropriating money, or not, certain people are getting raises while others aren't. People who don't even work with the kids, they just, they're doing other jobs that have nothing to do with the kids. They're getting raises every year, and their raises are pretty good, but the teachers, like the aides, are not getting raises. They don't get promotions. They get treated pretty badly. And a lot of times, they can, they're just waiting for retirement, and they're beat down, and they're wearing many hats. They're doing, their job and jobs of other people that aren't there because they're grossly understaffed. And then what also they've been doing is they've also had issues where they've allowed certain teachers to have tenureship that they should have fired maybe years ago. And those people work there, and they have all kind of issues, racial bias. They've got some teachers there that don't even like Black kids. And I know this, and I don't even know why these people are still hired, and they're your kids' teachers, and you send them there every day, and you're wondering why these kids are getting expelled. Don't wonder why. The other thing is that, You also have these schools that are heavily policed because of what neighborhoods they're in. And so Dorsey is one, Dorsey High, uh, along with Crenshaw High. There's some other schools that I've seen that they right there at the school, the police there are always out 24/7, circling. Some of that is good and some of that isn't, because it makes it seem like it's prison, and like, oh my God, what is it about this school that they got to have all these officers here, you know? So that's just to give an insight of some of the stuff that I know I've witnessed. There's also been some developments where people are giving themselves high salaries as well. They've been allowed to do this, and they're in positions of power, and they feel that they have the green light to do this. And the problem with this is they can't get rid of these people, or at least they're not getting rid of them, because the reason is because more than one person is benefiting from this. So a lot of times they've been allowed to stay in these positions because they have friends that are there that kind of do the same thing, and they support one another, even though they're not really doing the right things. They're giving themselves high salaries, allowing people that shouldn't be working with kids to stay working with kids, and and some of the good teachers are not getting paid that much, the ones who probably should. And the ones who are getting paid a lot of money, they complain they're not, and they're horrible teachers. Horrible. They pull all their ideas from the little aid people. Those are the ones that actually do all the real work. And they're not getting paid the money that the lead one is getting. She just dictates, or he or she they do a lot of dictating. It's mainly heavy numbers of teachers in elementary schools. Most of them tend to be female, but every now and then you will have male teachers. You have male teachers. That's the other thing. Male teachers, and then when you do see male teachers, you see more of them at the high school level than you do in the elementary schools. Elementary schools, you see more of the women teaching there. Not like that's the bad thing, but I'm just saying you can tell that there is something really seriously wrong too with the school districts. There's also issues where some teachers won't get along with other teachers for whatever the reason, and so that causes problems. And so there's a whole lot of things, a laundry list, even maybe 2 laundry lists full of complaints and issues that staff has had about the schools, and pay and raises, and issues that cause teachers to want to strike. And so they have so many problems. This is just one of the many problems that they deal with in LA schools, all over actually in the county. There's issues, and so this is not a surprise whatsoever. And so I thought I would mention that. I think too, you can tell, like when you go to certain places, the schools where there's more involvement from parents in the community, and there's more money that is in care and time that's put into those schools and the kids, versus schools where it's just heavily policed. What is that telling the kids? It's almost like it's okay, everybody line up, go through the metal detector. It's like it's preparing them for the worst. It's preparing them for prison, basically. And so it's heavily policed. And so some of this, however, is too, they're not telling you that some of these kids, there are some that are involved in gangs. And that is the reason why they have been doing this, policing some of these schools, because there's a large gang population that still exists in LA County. And so some of these kids are either siblings of gang members or they themselves are in a gang. And so there may be certain gangs that are like high on the radar, and that is the reason why they have some of these schools that are heavily policed out of nowhere. And you're like, why do they have to have so much law enforcement at this school? And so you have to look up to the neighborhood the school is in, and just look up what gangs are in that area. And then that can tell you, see, they're not going to tell you, but you as a parent have to look that up and say, well, what gangs are in this neighborhood? And then when you look that up, think about it. They're teenagers that are influenced. They might have brothers, sisters in gangs. And so that's why usually they tend to like to hang out around other high schoolers or young people to influence them to get in the gang or hang out or affiliate themselves with gangs. So they go to these high schools. And so that's why if your high school is heavily policed, that might be an indicator as why it's heavily policed, but it still doesn't give them the right to just focus on one ethnic group. That's, racial profiling in the schools, and that's what I've been saying, and that does happen. And I've been saying this. I've said this in other videos before this article came out. So this pretty much validates what I've been saying about the racial profiling. It goes on in schools. And believe me, it's not just the police officers that do it. There are teachers that are working in this school that profile kids. And it's certain ones. Not all teachers are doing it, but it's certain ones. And you got to think about it. If your kid they're always saying something, there's always something negative, that, there's a strong possibility that that kid is being targeted not just because they claim they're trying to do something to help the kid. Some places they will indicate they really want to help your kid, but be careful, because some of those places, they just want to get that kid off your hands. They want to send that kid and move that kid somewhere else because they don't want to deal with them anymore. And a lot of times, sometimes it can be racial. It depends on whom it's coming from. And so you have to be a good discerner of that. And you have to know what's the neighborhood makeup and who all's attending there, how many African American students attend the school, how many African American students, like if you compare, are suspended versus other students. Of course, it may not seem as high a number when there's a majority that is Hispanic students, but if you have a small number of African American or Black kids, but the number of suspensions is higher than the number of Black kids, it's like, wow, all this suspending of Black children, if they did a record or a tally of it. Or, sometimes they won't suspend kids because they know it'll go on record. What they'll do is they'll make the kids sit outside. Or, they used to have something when I was growing up, they had a detention, like you go to detention, but now they do something else. They do other things. So you have to find out, every school has different rules, different things they do. And so if you know or you feel suspicious that your kid's being targeted, you might be right. It may not be just all in your mind. But it's hard to prove because you're going to have teachers that are going to be in cahoots with one another, and they're going to try to write it off as it's more your issue, not them. And so a lot of times they support one another, even when they're doing wrong. I mean, you got people that are working in these schools making like lots of money, and then they turn around and say, "Oh, we don't have money for this and this for certain departments or certain things that kids need." But all of a sudden, you got these administrators that are making all this money every year, and they get a raise constantly, and their pay just seems to go up while other people's pay either stays right where it has always been or it barely moves a notch. And so those are things that I'm adding to this that you probably don't know is going on in the school districts. And there are people that are not getting paid fairly. Um, they're getting a lot less than what they should be getting. And then two, I don't understand this. I learned this later that some districts pay more than others. I don't know why that is. There's some districts that are higher. They can pay more than others. I don't know what that whole thing is about, but there's some districts that are their pay is poor, poor, poor. And that is another reason why those schools have more openings. Because once people have been there and they learn that they're not getting paid what other districts are paying, they move, they leave because they feel as though that is way too low. And when you include in the cost of living and what's been going on with housing, there's a housing crisis in LA. And, if you want to rent nowadays, you got to pay like a lot of money unless you're on some kind of program. And you're going to be out of the pocket at least $2,000-3,000 a month. And that's just renting. You're not even owning anything. And so, but these schools sometimes won't want to pay, what some of these teachers have been there. They really worked hard with the kids. Now, these are really good teachers that, they don't have a problem with kids of color and anybody. They're really work really hard, but they just don't get paid very well. There's a couple of school districts that I know that have done that, and they have the most openings. So that's the reason why they have the most openings, because they're not paying what the other districts are paying. And so there's a lot going on in these schools that then people know. And there's a lot of craziness going on. There's people that really shouldn't be working around kids. They haven't caught them yet, that are pedophiles, or they look at the girls. They're just little girls, or they're doing things to the boys, or they're touching kids a certain way, and you don't find out until you see it on the news. And then the reason why they've been allowed to work there years and years and years is because they don't get caught, because it's not just one person doing it. There's a group of them doing it. And they protect one another. And the only time they get caught is if some kid finally gets tired of being abused or exploited, and comes forward, is, strong enough to come forward and say what's going on. So that tends to happen more in the elementary schools and, maybe the preschools, but elementary schools mainly. And it takes a long time to catch those people that are doing that kind of stuff. And even if other teachers, like, let's say somebody that doesn't have a high position, they know that somebody's doing it, they try to report it. They'll try to make that person's life a living hell working there, because they know something and they don't want you to tell. And so they berate you. They call you names. Oh, you're a snitch, you're a rat, but you're probably trying to save lives of kids or futures of kids. But because you're saying what's really going on, they don't want you to say the truth. And so they try to threaten you with, threaten you with saying that they're going to send you to court, or they got friends that are going to do this. This happens in the school districts with certain individuals, certain staff. They feel that, if you tell too much about what's happening in the school, because see, they don't want their party broken up, a party of evil broken up. So I really think they should be looking at not only this stuff, the profiling, but some of the other corruption that is going on in these school districts. There's a lot of it. A lot of it. There's misappropriation of money in these school districts, and it isn't being utilized the way it should, or there are people that are giving themselves raises and high salaries that don't really need it. That money could be used to, give some of the aid, the teacher assistants, a better raise, but they don't care. And so this is why they lose a lot of employees, and it's like a revolving door. Well, with that being said, I'm going to let this video go. I thought I would bring that out. I know somebody's going to be mad, and they're going to say, why did you have to say that? Because it breaks up their party. It breaks up their agenda of evil on what they want to do to people at these schools, and make people's lives a living hell, and so it makes you uncomfortable working there because you feel like somebody's going to rat on you or something like that, because they're going to say, well, she's the one told it, or, this person told on us, and, they call you the rat, but really you're trying to help kids. You're actually trying to help their futures. And then these people are trying to, be more about themselves and their wallet and how much money they make, and being conniving and sneaky and all that. And so you do have these individuals that are, it's unfortunate because you do have, I'm going to say this, you do have good teachers. You do have some staff that is really good, and they really do want to work with the kids, but they're, however, just like anything else, any other place, any other occupation, anything in the world you would think about, if there's going to be good people, you best believe there's going to be some bad ones among the bunch. And so that's the way the schools operate. You have to weed out who are the sharks from the guppies. And so that's how it is in the school district. It's like you don't know which one is a decent person until you start having more personalized conversation with individuals and finding out what they're about. But this police at LA schools are arresting and citing Black students at a disproportionate rate. That is something that's been going on. This is not something new. It's been going on, and I've seen that. I've seen where they start in elementary school singling kids out, and it's always the Black students there sitting outside the door. Ask your kid what happened at school today. Ask your kid, what is it like up there at the school? Are you getting in trouble a lot? If they're in trouble, they're always outside. They're always, something's wrong with your Black kid. Think about it. Did he really do something wrong, or is it something else going on? You have to really give it some strong thought, because sometimes the truth doesn't come out until you start going up there and you start investigating what's going on. A lot of parents, they work and they're tired and they don't have time to do a lot, but you better start paying attention, because these schools now, they're set up so that if you don't pay attention to what's going on, they'll fall through the cracks. And these schools, they have now this thing, what they call prison pipeline. And so that's what's happening, where the schools are set up to pretty much predict where your kid's going to end up before they even get out of school. And so, what is it? I had looked it up before, and so they've changed it now. In the United States, the school to prison pipeline, it's also known as school to prison link or schoolhouse to jailhouse track, is the disproportionate tendency of minors and young adults from disadvantaged backgrounds to become incarcerated because of increasingly harsh school and municipal policies. And that's how it starts. It starts with these issues that you're seeing now, and that's the first step. And kids end up, next thing you know, they end up in prison. And so they're saying this thing is now increasing. It's the school to prison pipeline explained, okay? So American kids and the school to prison pipeline. Okay, and so I'm looking at this. I don't know. It looks like it might be a video. Both of these are videos. I'm not going to click on them. But anyway, it says social sciences, the school to prison pipeline is a process through which students are pushed out of schools and into prisons. In other words, it is a process of criminalizing youth that is carried out by disciplinary policies and practices within schools that put students into contact with law enforcement. And so that's basically what it is. And so they have something where they want counselors, not cops. It's an event in Richmond that emphasizes intersectionality of school to prison pipeline. Searching for the answers, how students search policy feeds to school to prison pipeline. Okay, so it says Harvard Political Review. And so this is real. So I don't know if people realize that this is still going on. They might have heard about it, but they thought, oh, that was when we were kids. No, it's still happening. And so, but now you have this issue here where they claim, which is not really a claim, it is happening. Police at LA schools are arresting and citing Black students at a disproportionate rate. It's because they're preparing them. Look at how they stand there. It's like preparing them for, prison, basically, or, for law enforcement, preparing them for, we'll see you soon kind of thing. And so it's a very negative, feeling. And so the kids, they get used to that and conditioned to that. And then before they even get out of high school, what do you think is going to happen? So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to let this video go. There's a lot of stuff going on in these schools, not just them only targeting Black students. There's a lot of corruption that is going on in some of these schools, if you wouldn't believe. And so that's why I brought up the scandal with the city of Bell, where money was taken out of the community. Well, guess what? I believe there's money that should be given, or at least distributed a little bit more than what it is, and somebody's pocketing, or they're giving themselves high salaries and high raises. And so, because the parents don't ask questions and don't read up on it, don't know about it, then nobody's saying anything about it, well, except me. But anyway, with that being said, I'm going to let this go. Thanks for listening.